Hello and welcome to this AQA GCSE drama revision video. In this video we will be looking at section B of the written examination, and that is the study of set text. Before you begin to attempt answering any of the questions, you need to make sure you take the time to read the printed extract before the questions. So this extract here is taken from the play Things I Know to Be True. So if you'd like to take the time now just to read the entire extract. So you've read the extract, now it's time to understand the question. And today we are looking at the 20-mark question. This is the fourth question. And for the 20-mark question, there will be an option to do a design question or a performer-based question. And today we're going to look at a performer-based question. So here it is. You are performing the role of Rosie. Describe how you would use your acting skills to interpret Rosie's character. Explain why your ideas are appropriate for this extract and the performance of your role in the play as a whole. 20 marks. So this question is asking us to do two things. Number one, to describe, which in this case is to set out the characteristics. So that's to go into detail and to talk about all the different vocal and physical acting skills you might use. And secondly, it's asking you to explain, to set out the purposes or reasons. So it's given reasons for all of your different vocal and physical skills, giving your justifications. So let's think about some of the ways that you could interpret Rosie within this extract. Maybe she feels shame and embarrassment after her heartbreak and failed trip. She wants her parents to recognise her as a grown-up and to be seen as changed by the trip. She runs home in times of pain and uncertainty. She is irritated by Fran's ability to identify the cause of her pain, despite her attempts to conceal them. She has a close bond with both parents and particularly with Bob, her dad. She feels great comfort from just being home and surrounded by the things that she knows to be true. She is at a crossroads and deeply confused and directionless. She is still struggling to process the pain that Emmanuel's betrayal has caused her. She is unwilling to talk about her experiences, or she is raw and fragile and tired from her long journey. So when you're thinking about how you would perform Rosie in this extract, you need to decide what effect you are trying to create for the audience. And is it a few of these bullet points here, or are they some new ideas that you've got yourself? It's up to you. So in addition to thinking about how you might interpret Rosie within this specific extract, the question also demands us to consider how you might portray Rosie in the entirety of the play. So let's think of some ideas. Maybe her dependence on her family to give her security and her sense of self. Her struggle to be recognised as an adult and forge her own life. Her close bond with her siblings, particularly Mark, and the pain and grief she feels when he puts his own needs above hers for the first time. Her total support of Mark's decision to transition despite Fran's objections. Her devotion to her father Bob. Her conflicting feelings about her role within the family as she revels in the support and attention she receives as the youngest, but also craves her independence. Her inability to make a decision about her future plans. Her final decision to move away and study, carving out an independent and meaningful life away from her family. Or her feelings of being totally lost after the death of her mother, and her acknowledgement that this loss is what finally forces her to grow up. And she talks about her childhood finally ending. So we need to think about actually how we're going to interpret Rosie throughout the entirety of the play in order to answer this question. Now, when you're writing your response, there are two things that you can do. So you're going to think about your interpretation of the extract, and then when you talk about the wider play, you might talk about how this character is consistent in other parts of the play. Or you might want to talk about how the character develops throughout the play. So you could talk about either how the character seems to be the same at different moments in the play, or how they change and how the events of the play change them. So just think about that and be explicit about that in your response, and this will become a little clearer a little later on. So, as always, In order to get top marks on this question, you need to really be using the dramatic terminology that you will be familiar with. This includes your vocal skills, so all of those words on the left-hand side, and your physical skills as well. And it's important that you're not generalized in your response, but you're giving kind of specifics, vocals and physicals. So let's just recap the question here. You are performing the role of Rosie. Describe how you would use your acting skills to interpret Rosie's character. Explain why your ideas are appropriate for this extract and the poor performance of your role in the play as a whole. And this gives you 20 marks, so it's a really important question. So we've looked at the question. Now let's think about how we're going to take our ideas that we've generated and turning them and structuring them into a response. So, the best way to focus on this question is to think about 3 big moments from the play for the character. So obviously the extract that you're going to be talking about is one of those moments, it's one of those big character moments. And then you're going to refer to 2 other moments. Now they might be 1 moment before and 1 moment after, sort of 2 moments before the extract or 2 moments after the extract. But 3 just gives you the opportunity to talk about the character and their consistency or their development. It's really important that you include quotes, and in a moment when I show you an example, these quotes will appear in bold text. So both quotes from the extract that you're working on, but also quotes from the other 2 moments in the play. And this is where you can either refer to the script that you will have in the exam with you, because you can have a clean copy of the script, or if you've managed to learn any quotes during your revision, you can refer to them and really quickly put them into your response. So important, as always, with these performer questions that you describe in detail, and that's where you're using that dramatic terminology. And also you explain your reasons. So every time you say you do something, if you say you raise your volume, if you say you change the tone of your voice, it's important that you give your reasons for that, ensuring that you're linking your response to the question. And it's a really good idea to include a brief, and I mean a very brief, character profile at the start of your response, and it just helps put everything that you're saying into context. And finally, don't forget that during this response, it's an opportunity for you to reveal your understanding of the play, the characters and their relationship. So this is your chance to show off all of your knowledge about things I know to be true, or whatever play you're writing about. So we've thought about the question, we've thought about how we might structure our ideas into a response. Let's bring it together. Throughout the play, Rosie is forced to become the grown-up, which we learn she is desperately searching to become, right from her first monologue towards the start of the play. In this extract, she is presented as ashamed and embarrassed about her heartbreak, and cautious not to worry her family. However, she is also naive and has not yet truly become the adult which she yearns to be. When she felt unsure, she ran back to her family and the things which she knows to be true. I would portray this aspect of her character through my vocal and physical skills. Arriving home to Fran's interrogation after her long, draining travels, Rosie does not feel like talking about the reason for her immediate return. And so when Bob begins the questions, she responds with, "I know," repeating it twice. When saying these lines, I would extend the end of the word, speaking in an exhausted, whiny tone at a quiet volume, as though trying to deflect attention from herself to something else. I would emphasize this by drawing my arms in front of me and wringing my hands together. An exasperated facial expression would be plastered on my face, my brows furrowed and a small frown on my mouth, to further build the impression of frustration. As the youngest child, Rosie has always been the centre of attention, and in her endeavours to be treated as an adult, dislikes being mollycoddled. Nevertheless, when saying different, I would speak in a higher pitch with a wistful tone and an eagerness which was not present before. I would further express this eagerness by leaning slightly towards Bob, my body language more open, shoulders back and head inclined, hoping to hear that I have changed and am now more grown up. Nevertheless, when my hopes are subdued, I would return to my original position. Throughout the conversation, I would alter my speech and body language accordingly into these responses, and then when saying, I don't have the answers, not now, not yet, and if you keep asking, I'm going to cry. I would speak with a wavering tone, my pronunciation muffled by the tears in my throat and a quiet volume, depicting the vulnerability which I feel. I would raise a hand to my throat, gently rubbing it as though in an automatic response to a situation which threatens my emotions. All these skills would portray to the audience Rosie's unsure nature, which is standing in the way of her true progression to adulthood, an idea which is also depicted later in the play. So this here is my response, specifically talking about the extract. So I'm telling the examiner how I intend to perform and act the extract, referring to lots of vocal and physical skills, and you can see the vocal and physical skills, the description there in the red font. And in the orange font, I'm explaining why I'm doing all of these things and the effect that I'm hoping to create. And I'm also setting up this idea about how I'm interpreting Rosie in this extract, this idea of this girl who's trying to grow up and trying to be seen as more of an adult. Let's look at another section of the play now. So that was our first moment. Let's move on to the second moment. Earlier in the play, I would want to convey Rosie as younger and more naive. In her opening monologue, Rosie is ecstatic. She believes she has found true love and is finally all grown up. However, by the end of her speech, it is clear to the audience that she still relies on the comfort of her family and the protection which they offer from the pain of the outside world. Ironically, it is this pain at the end of the play which forces her to grow up. When saying the line, I feel small, I feel like a child, I feel ridiculous, I would speak in a quiet voice with mumbled sobs, as though I am embarrassed to admit to my own naivety, whilst clutching my hands over my chest and gently shaking as though crying. The admission that I don't know very much at all would be spoken in a broken form, as though I am hesitant to admit I was wrong about everything, that really there is very few things I know to be true. The line, I want my dad, I want my mum, is echoed later in the play after Fran's death. And so to make it more prominent in this scene, I would speak in a soft tone, gasping for breath between words, overcome with emotion. I would outstretch my arms, gesticulating boldly, emphasising my passion, portraying a childlike lack of restraint. So, in this moment here, the second moment that I'm talking about, we're thinking about Rosie and the slight contrast in her personality, the fact that she wants to present herself as a grown-up, but she really does come across far more young and naive. It's the beginning of the play, so we're seeing a little bit of contrast in terms of our interpretation of the character. Let's move on to the final moment. At the end of the play, Fran's death ultimately forces Rosie to grow up. She acknowledges that this loss was necessary for her personal growth, yet is emotionally devastated after the death of her mother. Leaving a pause between the two sentences, Rosie says, I know what grief tastes like. It's bitter. The subtle pause would add emphasis to her sensitive and tender feelings as a grieving child, and adding a quiet volume would create an emotive, gentle undertone to her soft yet intrusive thoughts. I would stand in a natural stance and be completely still throughout the scene, to reflect the shock Rosie is experiencing. She is struggling to gather her thoughts in pure distress. By doing this, Rosie's development since the start is accented. Her dependence on her parents now lost as Rosie is pushed directly into adulthood. When saying, I know what it sounds like, it's loud, I would say this in a faster and more confident tone, as well as being rushed wanting to get this explanation over because thinking about her hurts too much. However, when I say loud, there is a significant pause, almost searching for the correct word to describe the feelings, while squeezing my body tight and then sighing and relaxing my body, putting all my body weight onto one leg, showing I'm uncomfortable, while a finger wipes away at tears. Still searching for the word and not knowing what word to choose shows she still doesn't understand how she feels and how this is a new world for her, as she has to be independent with no one to lean on or any support, which is forcing her to grow up. Before saying, my childhood finally ended, I would pause and shut my eyes tight, putting both hands over my face, to show the difficulty this grief has upon me, which would show how hard it is to admit whilst drawing this moment to the audience and conveying that I am now the adult I have been so desperate to become. So here we have the final moment, and this moment is right from the end of the play, and it's an opportunity to show the examiner your knowledge of the character and how the character has developed, and in this instance, Rosie's development from the girl to the woman at the end of the play. Again, notice all of the description here coloured in red, the specific vocal and physical skills, and then the orange, the explanation, the reasons why you have decided to include these ideas. So there you have a 20-mark response to the 20-mark question. I hope this video has been useful to you. Thank you and good luck.